Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to episode 230 of The Reformed Gamers, a show about theology and gaming. I'm one of your hosts, Logan.
And I am his co-host, Micah.
I gotta be honest, man, saying episode 230 kind of threw me off there for a second. I almost said episode 203, and I was like, no, it's crazy to think that there's been 230 episodes of this show.
Don't set us back a year now. That's a lot of episodes.
I know, that is a lot of episodes. I actually went back and listened to a couple of them last week, just because, there's a new clips channel for the podcast on YouTube, which a link will be in your show notes to your listeners. I was like, okay, what kind of clips can I pull from previous episodes, kind of the more relatively recent ones? And man, I was just like, scrolling through all the episodes, I'm just like, good grief, there's so many that we've done.
Yeah, you need to make notes, like just make a little flag, or like just put a timestamp down as you feel one coming on, or like, okay, maybe that would be a good clip, or like write it down right after we record. Perhaps keep it fresh, man. So yeah, there's always little 3, 4, 6 minute bites that we can pull out for sure.
Yep. So again, dear listeners, all that stuff will be in your show notes for that channel. Just because I get it. Like sometimes it's hard to really fit an hour-long podcast into your schedule. I get it. So the clips channel is going to kind of circumvent that, where maybe you can fit 6 minutes in, 8 minutes here and there of a part of the episode, and you can enjoy that really whenever you want. So you can check that out, man. I gotta say though, before we get into this whole show here, last episode with Joe Thorne, holy guacamole! Not only was it awesome, you should totally go check it out if you haven't listened to it. But man, a lot of people listen to that one. It's like the highest viewed podcast episode on the YouTube channel, closing in at 600 views, which is wild to me. Doing really well, and so it was a lot of fun. We need to have Joe back on sometime in the future. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. It was great having Joe part of the show. Pardon the rhyme there, but yeah, he was so laid back and chill, just smoking on that cigar, and yeah, he was fantastic. He brought the heat. That was a great episode. Yep. Good traction, of course, for TRG, but yeah, good stuff there. Absolutely. Well, dear listeners, we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit. Normally we have a housekeeping section here, but I think from now on, because I literally just tell y'all to go subscribe to the YouTube channel and check that stuff out. I'm assuming y'all are doing that anyway. If there's anything big, I'll bring it up at this point. But, well, I guess I probably could mention that, we are in November. I'm on baby watch for the next couple months. So in lieu of that, I didn't want to nail anything down and schedule things, and then the baby's born. It's like, oh man, we got to fly out and go pick up the baby, sign the paperwork, and do all that. So this will be my last episode of the year, which is wild to think about. Oh man, that's weird to think about when you phrase it that way. But yeah, a little bit of a tease, a little bit of a nice little tease. Yeah.
Not only in the next episode do you get the handsome baby face man Micah, but you also get the handsome bearded man Adam as well. So
yes.
Be looking forward to that. It'll be a lot of fun. So
yeah, he'll be joining us for the next episode, or he'll be joining me for the next episode, I guess. Lord willing, he said he's good to go next or 2 Wednesdays from now. But yeah, really looking forward to that. Got an exciting topic that will hopefully get the community riled up. But yeah, we're excited to get going. But yeah, we're gonna miss you for the rest of the year, obviously. And good luck. And obviously, we're praying for you with everything with the adoption. Hope that it just goes smoothly. Health for the mother and child and everything. So yeah, man, we're all praying for you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. But with that being said, we're here on the show. We're recording. You're watching or listening. One of the two. Maybe you're doing both. I don't know. Guess you can do both. Let's get into a little bit of news, mainly just because today, the day that we're recording, November 2nd, some news dropped, some pretty big news that was very unexpected, to the point where it got poor Micah over here to be unproductive for the entire morning. It just, I don't know. Sony, what are you doing over there? We're trying to get some work done, and you're making it hard for us. PSVR 2, we've been hearing rumblings about it. We finally got a release date and a price point for it. Micah, let's just talk about it, man. You're the resident news guy. I'm gonna have you kind of break this down for us as we get into it.
Yeah, sure enough. The PlayStation VR 2, which we've known about for quite some time now. They finally dated it for February the 22nd next year, 2023, and it's going to retail for $550 US. That is for the base unit and the controllers. There's also a bundle that includes the game Horizon Call of the Mountain, which is $600 US. So another $50 upcharge there. But yeah, for the base unit and the 2 controllers, it's going to be $550, which that has sent kind of shockwaves throughout the industry, as far as I think everyone's experiencing some sticker shock.
Yeah.
Looking at that price, like, whoa, okay, there. It's not great, because the headline is it costs more than the PS5. That's and of course it does. It's a fact. So that's not a good look.
Yeah.
I thought going in, I think the prognostication was, my hope was 400, but I thought it would probably be 500. So this is really kind of right in that realm, with maybe a little bit of recent economic turmoil driving up the extra 50, maybe, who knows, whatever.
Yeah.
That's an odd, 550 is odd to me, but anyway. The original PlayStation VR, the one that came with the headset and the 2 Move controllers and the camera, was also $500. So when you think of it, it's like, well, it's not too much difference, actually, because you're getting a lot of good stuff with the new controllers specifically, and with the headset, obviously, lots of bells and whistles, and good specs there. I think the problem is just that there's a couple of problems here. Is the library of games, I don't think, is as promising as many had hoped.
Yeah.
We don't know how Horizon Call of the Mountain is going to be. It could be a Half-Life Alyx type experience.
True.
It could be garbage. We just don't know. And there's a lot of games that have been out for other VR headsets. So it's a lot of regurgitation, and nothing really truly exciting there. For PlayStation VR 2 owners outside of Horizon. So the prospect, the cost and everything is just too steep in this economic climate. Maybe I think this would have been better back in 2016 when the original PSVR came out. It's like, okay, here's the specs and it's $550. I think we've all been okay, fine.
Yeah.
Now in this climate that we're in with inflation and everything else, and our grocery bills going up, our power bills going up, whatever the case, I don't know that 550 is going to fly after you probably just recently or semi-recently just got a PS5. I don't know. I don't know where. I think friend of the show, Josh Broccolo, over at the Backlog Breakdown, he's been skeptical of Sony's whole approach. And now that it's kind of here and we're seeing a lot of the details, I kind of have to agree with him.
Yeah.
What market are they going to, what new market are they carving out? It's going to be the same old. You're going to hit the same, you're going to hit the same market, the same really kind of uber PlayStation fans that really want that, and not many people else. Yeah. And, you could say, well, those people spend a lot on games, and they do. Like, the attach rate for games would be great for PSVR 2, but it's not going to pierce anything else that the previous one didn't do, I don't think. So, yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents. I'm still kind of like processing it all. Like, we got the news today, so there's still more information to be had, but right now it's kind of like, I'm going to wait for a price drop, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think especially when you consider the market of who the PSVR 2 is going towards, it's going towards us, console players, some of us that game a little more casually, right? I think if you game a little more hardcore, you're probably going to be on the PC side. And you have your Valve, what is it called? It's like a Valve something. I was looking at it earlier, but the VR system that Steam has, is over 1,000, and there's some models of the Meta Quest that are over 1,000 that spec wise are kind of around the same ballpark, if not like more on the higher end of that. But when you consider what those do, they work with your PC, so you can do more things with it. Sure, that makes a little more sense, but for someone who, like you said, just bought a PS5 not too long ago, you already spent $500 on it, and you look at this like, I don't know if I want to spend over $1,000 on this whole thing just to, because not only that, if you buy just the base model, $550 right there, and you buy a game with it, you're going to be over $600 at that point, and it's like,
right.
That's a hard sell. That is a hard sell. No doubt there's going to be people who are going to be picking it up, but I don't know if it's going to be as many as PlayStation hopes for. And so.
Yeah, I'm not sure. They may have already announced if games such as Resident Evil 4 like if you buy the regular PS5 version, if it just works in VR for the PSVR 2. I'm not sure about that in Resident Evil 8. I think that might be the case. That'd be, like, well, I already got this game, I can go ahead and pop it in kind of thing. Right. But just the proposition just isn't there for the value. So they've got an uphill battle, I think. They may sell all the units just because that's kind of the climate we're in, sort of like everything's selling out, all the chips, all the consoles, all the things are selling out. So I wouldn't be surprised if they sold through all of these guys. I just don't know. I don't know how the support's going to be long term. We'll see how once it gets closer to launch and more people, more media outlets get their hands on it and they say, oh well, it's actually really great. You might want to think twice about it. Right now, I'm just not impressed.
Yeah, I was also especially surprised to see that it was still tethered, which they may have said that it was going to be tethered still, but even still, I'm like, man, that's because I went and looked at one of the Meta Quests. I think it was the Quest 2 is what I looked at, and that was around 400. And it seemed pretty. I wasn't comparing the specs. It just was a pretty tantalizing offer, especially when it comes with Beat Saber. Which, let's be honest, if you're going to buy VR, that's probably the only game that a lot of us are going to play is Beat Saber. I'm sure there's going to be some of us that are more adventurous and goes and tries out some of the other games and the other offerings. But let's be honest, we're all buying VR just to play Beat Saber. Let's be honest. Let's just be honest. So yeah, time will tell. We'll see closer to launch, and we'll surely talk about it a little bit more as it comes out and we get more news. But yeah, again, dear listeners, we bring this up because we like to talk about the news every now and then. But also, what do you think about it? We did tweet this out, but not everybody's on Twitter. We totally understand that. So let us know in the comments or wherever it is you're listening to this, or let us know on Twitter, Discord, all those fancy places. Man. Let's talk about something a little bit more exciting, though. What we're playing. Micah, catch us up, man. What have you been playing recently? We've been seeing some screenshots on your Twitter of a certain game. Let's hear about it.
Oh boy, that photo mode, it gets me every time. Real quick before I say what I've been playing, I think photo modes have been more of a problem, like an actual problem for me than like trophies and achievements and stuff. Like I spend hours. Like if there's like a 20-hour game, I will spend like 4-5 hours in photo mode or something like that as well, like on top of the 20 hours. It's a problem. I've been playing A Plague Tale Requiem. This game is the follow-up to A Plague Tale Innocence. This is the game set in 14th century France. Of course, all the plague that happened back then, with all the rats and everything. That's kind of like one of the main mechanics is sneaking around and getting away from these hordes of rats. You play as the main character, Amicia, and you're kind of usually holding the hand of your younger brother, Hugo, who is like sort of the cause of all this plague, and he's sort of at the center of it all as far as the story and plot goes. Logan, this game is fantastic, brother. I don't know if you've played Innocence or not. I can't remember if have you played Innocence?
I did manage to download it to my PlayStation. I have not played it just yet, though. Okay,
I know there's a lot. Everyone's always recommending games. These games are so good to me. The story and the writing are just chef's kiss good. Really some of the best writing and stuff that you can get in games, I think, of this caliber, of this in this genre. So of course this is fans of the game will know this is largely a stealth game. You're doing a lot of slinking around and being sneaky around guards. You're having to use light because the rats are afraid of light to get around the environment. And there's you're constantly using fire and different tools and items at your disposal to create light so you can get around and stuff. It's really well designed how they do it, and they've expanded the gameplay wise the sort of level design of Innocence and really kind of blown it open. I think of it how in the Uncharted series, in Uncharted 4, I think they had that Madagascar level where you're driving around the Jeep and it's much more open and you can kind of go wherever. Imagine that, but to a smaller scale. They really kind of opened up and kind of popped open each environment. So when you're sneaking around, there's many more just kind of ways to get around the guards, or okay, well, I don't want to go this way. We're going to go this way or that way, and it's just a much more kind of varied experience when you get to each kind of stealthy scenario. So that's nice. The puzzles and the way you they incorporate them are better than the previous game, I think.
Okay.
And yeah, like visually, it's fantastic. The music is captivating. Really great orchestral score with a lot of strings, a lot of cellos, and just things like that. Wonderful, wonderful package. It's really it tells a fantastic, emotional story with a lot of heart and a lot of just kind of pouring your heart out kind of stuff. It's really like a dire situation for Amicia and Hugo. And I can't say enough about the acting performances from everyone. All the characters are just great. I'm really, this is getting my highest recommendation. This is taking my game of the year. Boom, right up there at the top.
Wow.
I love this game. Yes. I know we got God of War literally next week. I think Adam and I will probably talk about it next episode. Mm-hmm. And, we'll see about that. But this game is right up my alley. It tells a fantastic story with great visuals, great writing, and voice acting, great score, good pacing, good puzzles. It's just a great package from Team Asobo, a team that I feel like won't be independent for too much longer. I know they're kind of making games for Focus. I feel like Microsoft or Sony could scoop these guys up any minute and make them internal. These guys are fantastic. They also developed Microsoft Flight Simulator, oddly enough.
Really?
Yeah, Microsoft Flight Simulator and A Plague Tale, which are that's also a great game. So they've got some chops over there at that studio. So this gets my highest recommendation. Love A Plague Tale Requiem. If you're a fan of the genre or you're a fan of the first game, absolutely play this game.
Okay. Right on. Sorry, I'm adding it to my GG app so that way
yes, please do.
Don't forget to play it. I've been seeing this game a lot on Twitter, both from you and from other people retweeting other people with their great screenshots. I saw one where it might have been one of your screenshots. It was like the two characters in this giant, like, just beautiful looking meadow with some trees and stuff, very colorful. I was like, man, this is gorgeous. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Here's
I'm sorry, real quick. One caveat. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Logan. It's not for everyone because it is quite linear. It is very, especially Innocence. Requiem is a little less linear, but that could be a turnoff. I understand for some people, but sorry, go ahead with what you're about to say.
Oh, I was going to say, I love linear stuff. I am all for that. So that entices me even more. Let me. How long did it take you to finish the game?
The first one's probably about 12 hours. This one was closer to like 18, maybe.
That's perfect.
Somewhere around there.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's what I love to hear.
Yeah.
There's been some kerfluffle, some little, rumblings, some little people being a little angry online because of this game and Gotham Knights both being locked at 30 frames per second. Is this one locked at 30 frames on the PS5?
Right. So, yeah, it is locked at 30 frames. If you have a television that supports the VRR, all that stuff, I think it technically runs, you can run it at 40 max. I think it kind of, according to what Digital Foundry's found, I think it runs around, between 35 and 40. It's not a locked 40 is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
This, you can feel it because the PS5 next-gen upgrade, the Xbox Series X upgrade for A Plague Tale Innocence, the first game, it runs at 60, and it feels great. So it feels kind of like a downgrade almost to go to the 30 frames, playing on console, of course. And you feel it, but it's like anything. Like before you experience the goodness of 60 or 120 frames or whatever, you didn't really know what you're missing. After a little while, you just kind of like, you get used to it. It's like, okay, this is fine. You do feel it. And the problem is not necessarily the 30. This game, it has some stuttering, especially when the rats come out, because it has a little bit of it has a little bit of trouble handling all the rats on screen, I think. And you feel the dips. So maybe wait for a patch or two, or obviously play the first one, give it a month, and they'll probably have another patch or two to help performance, hopefully. you can feel it. It's there. I don't know how much. It depends on how much of a 30 frame snob you are. I'm not a super 30 frame snob, but I felt it, and I had to kind of get over that hump for about the first hour. But after a while, it kind of went away.
Okay, fair enough. I don't even know why I'm asking, because to be honest, by the time I get around to, I still got to play the first game, but by the time I get around to actually playing it, it'll probably be closer to, winter break, New Year's, and all that. Probably when it'll be discounted a little bit, and I'll have picked it up maybe, and they'll probably have patched it to give it a performance mode or something like that.
Last thing I'll mention on it, if you do play them, or if anyone's thinking about picking up the series for the first time, you can 100% go from Innocence right into Requiem, because the story picks up so well, as if it's kind of just one big long movie or something. Awesome. So you really could play them back to back, unless you just want to mix it up for the sake of it. But yeah, fantastic games there.
Awesome. Well, if it's linear, like you said, and it's got an easy mode, I mean,
oh yeah,
I'm there. That's what I'm looking for these days, is those shorter ones. Because as we get into what I've been playing, I have finished several games coming off of October. Some spooky games, some not so spooky games. Some I'll try and get a video up on, and some I'm just like, yeah, it's not going to happen. And I've been neglecting one of the games I've been so excited to play all year, which was, well, maybe not all year, but at least since I played the other 3 games in the series over the summer, and that is Trails from Zero. Finally sat down, put some more time into it, and now I'm in chapter 2, I think is what it is. I can't remember the title of the chapter, but yeah, it's still just as good for those maybe who aren't familiar and haven't seen my reviews of Trails in the Sky 1 through 3 on YouTube. Trails in the Sky is the first trilogy of the games in this Legend of Heroes series. Although I guess if you get into the semantics of it, which I won't get into, that'll be boring for most of our listeners. You typically want to play the Trails in the Sky games first. That gets you introduced to the area, some of the characters, and then you go into Trails from Zero, which is the 4th game in this new series, and it takes place in a different part of the country you got introduced to in the first 3 games, and you follow a whole new cast. But there's a few returning cast members from those first 3 games that it's always fun to see them again and kind of see where they're at. But I gotta say, these new characters, so I guess I should let people know, I'm about 20 hours into the game so far, and these new cast of characters are awesome. Love all 4 of them. Lloyd, Tio, or is it Tita? No, Tita's one of the characters from the first 3 games, but Tio, Randy, and I'm blanking on the other girl's name that I'm sure will come back to me later on, but I love all the characters. They're great. Lloyd is a great leader. Randy is just that kind of like that brute, but also kind of like that flirt kind of character that you get in those games. Tio's super smart, and the other one is just really wise and mysterious. You're like, why are you so smart? How do you know all this stuff? How are you this well connected in Crossbell? What's going on? And so there's a lot of intrigue. It's definitely a different take. In the original 3 games, you were more like kind of like the local mercenary group, taking care, helping out your communities. In this one, you're part of the police department, but everybody hates the police department. No one trusts them. And so you're trying to rebuild trust with the community, trying to essentially be the bracers from the first 3 games, but differentiating yourselves a little bit. So it's gotten really good. The writing has gotten into some things where it's intriguing. It's there's like obviously red tape at play to where you can't progress a certain way because you're still part of the police department, but there's other ways because you're kind of unofficially tied to them. You can kind of have a little bit of wiggle room and do some things that might be illegal, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know, but it's really good. It's got some cool quality of life changes to where you can speed up the game, kind of like what you're used to in the Final Fantasy remaster. So if you're grinding out experience, you can just speed that right up and keep it going. There's this new thing that I really love where, you know how it is. Sometimes you'll be playing a JRPG, they'll be talking a lot, you'll zone out for a little bit, and then all of a sudden you're fighting one of the characters in your party, and you're like, wait, what happened? There's a button you can press now that brings up all the dialogue that has been going throughout the game, and you can scroll up to where you missed, read through to where you're caught up, and like, okay, now I know what's going on. I have used that so many times because some of these cutscenes are pretty lengthy, and there's things I forget, so it's really good. The combat's just as good as it was in the last 3 games.
So explain the combat for me, because I'm looking at screenshots here, and Logan, like I said, before I came into TRG, I thought I liked JRPGs, but I've realized since I do not like JRPGs. So I'm learning about all these new series, not new series, I'm aware of them, but I just don't know much about. What kind of combat is it? Like, explain to me who's never played any game in the series. Like, what's the combat like?
So if you've played really anything that's turn-based combat, that's pretty much what it is. Although you're on a grid type system, so you can move the characters around, and you'll have to move either closer to the enemy or get away from the enemy depending on the attacks they're doing. And it's all telegraphed by like different diagrams and lines and stuff that's showing up, the little graphics that you can see. So it's basically turn-based. You have two styles of attacks. Apart from your normal attack, you have your magic attacks, which is what you're used to if you've played Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, any of that stuff. And then you have your crafts, which is more like specifically related to each character. So it's kind of like their special moves, so to speak. And you build up this meter as you attack in the game that builds up your CP meter, so that lets you use your crafts. And then you have your typical mana meter, which lets you use your magic attacks. And of course, some people are probably going to write in and be like, "Oh, it's actually an EP meter." I know what the meters are. I'm saying it so people who've never played this know what I'm talking about and can track along. Yeah. So stand down politely. But it's turn-based. If you're not a fan of turn-based, you're not going to like the combat. If you love turn-based, you're probably going to like the more complex, some nuances with this take on turn-based combat. It's really good because you can kind of see over on the left side of the screen the order of all the characters that are going to attack and kind of when they're going to get special moves, so you can plan moves accordingly and either, like I said, schedule your moves if you're going to use magic, or attack the monster that's going to attack next in the lineup, so that way you can free up that spot so 3 more of your characters can attack. It's pretty cool. It's very strategic when you take advantage of it. Unless you play on easy, then you don't really need to worry about a lot of that. But I'm playing on normal and trying to do as many side quests as I can. I don't run from any of the fights because I like to get that XP, even if it's going to take me a little bit longer to get through an area. I'd rather be over-leveled than under-leveled when it comes to bosses. And this game... 100%. I'll tell you, one of the first bosses you fight is this crime boss whose name I can't remember, but he's like red and has a mohawk and stuff. It'll tear you up if you don't know what you're doing. So it's good though. If you love JRPGs, this is a perfect jumping on point for the series. Obviously, when some of the characters come in, you're going to have no frame of reference. Whereas me, I see a character from the last 3 games I just spent like 80 plus hours through all 3 games. I'm giddy as can be. I'm like, I get to see you again. Come on back.
Logan, from now on, whenever you bring a JRPG onto the show that you've been playing, you need to run it by Jesse Knopp first and see if it gets his seal of approval. So you can just say on the show, this gets Jesse's JRPG seal of approval.
No. See, Jesse Knopp doesn't deserve any seals of approval when he says that Elix 1 and 2 are some of the best games ever made. And I played Elix 1. I didn't finish it, and there's a reason for that. His opinion doesn't matter on the show. His opinion does not matter. Okay. Now, when it comes to like people like Henry in the Discord server, people like Jimicus, their opinions matter. Jesse Knopp, not so much.
Oh, savage.
Yep. That's how we do. It's gonna be funny if he actually listens to this episode. I don't know if he will or not, but we'll see. He'll probably write in or direct message me. But yeah, with that being said, though, let's switch gears. Let's talk about, because we were talking a lot about the games we're enjoying, right? And this is going to be kind of a laid-back episode. We're going to be talking about, what kind of keeps us gaming. We're over 30 years old. If you listen to the last episode, you found out Micah is about to be put in the retirement home. He's so old. And, I'm about to graduate high school, but my parents still have to buy me my M-rated games. But, But no, we're actually over 30. But it's like, the question is like, well, what keeps us gaming? Why do we keep coming back to gaming? How do we even get into this, right? And so this is going to be a little bit more of a laid back episode. And, we pitched it to our patrons who, I'm going to tell you what, our patrons, they have been progressively showing up with the write-ins, giving us so many things that, I'll be honest, some of these I had to like kind of pick out portions of it to include with other write-ins, because there's just so many that if we were to read them all, we might be here a little bit longer than what we normally are. So
I mean, Kokorodaki, God bless you. You write in these novels every time, and we can't use it all so much. No, I appreciate it though. It's good stuff.
But no, it's good. It was fun reading through some of these stories, and we're going to get through some of them here in a little bit. But let's just talk a little bit before we get into some of our patron write-ins and get to see how they got into gaming. Man, Micah, share with us, man. Tell me how did you get started with gaming? Did a controller come floating out of the sky with a ray of light shining down on it, and then you held it above your hand and it spun around and like
it was close. It was close. I think probably the first thing, I've probably shared part of what I'm about to say in the past, but walking through our local mall back in the 80s, there was a local arcade there called Diamond Gems, and that's probably where I first like hey, what's that over there, what's going on over here kind of thing. And I got my first taste of things like Galaga and Miss Pac-Man and probably some other things I can't quite remember, but for all intents and purposes it was like Christmas 87, 88, something like that. I would have been like 5 or 6 years old. We got our Nintendo, our first NES, from my grandparents, and we had Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. Yeah, and that was it at the time. And we slowly built our library of the original Legend of Zelda, Excite Bike, 1942, Super Mario Brothers 3, all the great classic games for NES. So that was the genesis of it. Segue, we got a Sega Genesis after that. Didn't get a Super Nintendo, so I have a enormous SNES gap. Oh
man!
So if I was kind of ignorant back then with games. I just kind of went to, Blockbuster or the rental store or, Toys R Us and like, yeah, this looks good. Or, I saw a commercial or this has got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in it. I'll get it. That kind of thing. And I didn't know, I didn't have any friends that were like, hey, have you ever played Final Fantasy before? I didn't have any friends that were like that. They were kind of cluing me into really, really good games over on the SNES side. So, when I was 14, myself and my own money that I'd gotten from a job that summer, I went out to buy a PS1 and started getting into like gaming magazines and things like that, PSM and Official PlayStation Magazine. And so that was the first kind of like eye-opening, like, oh, okay, there's a whole scene here. It's like it wasn't just me looking at the back of cases at Blockbuster or whatever, figuring out what I want to rent. It was like, well, I remember those first few issues. It was all like Final Fantasy VII, 10 out of 10, because that was around the time that I got it.
Oh man!
And I was like, what's this Final Fantasy stuff? And so it's like, I mean, completely ignorant. The way, like everyone's lineage, the way they came up is different. So it's just funny. But of course, once I got the PlayStation, it was kind of no looking back then. Got very embedded into the culture, into like just. Kind of like knowing like pre-releases coming out and just being aware and like broadening my horizons with what I was playing. So that's how it all started for me. Really, when I was 14 and got the PS1, that's when it really kicked into overdrive for me. And I would say like I became a gamer. Like this is my hobby. Like this is what I love to use my spare time on and spend my money on and these types of things. So yeah, very impressionable years there, 14, 15, 16, playing those PS1 games like Metal Gear Solid and Resident Evil 2. Yeah. I remember specifically you were talking about Blockbuster recently, Logan, maybe on the patch notes that if you're a Patreon, $1 and up, you can go get. You were talking about just looking at cases and going with your dad at Blockbuster and getting a movie or getting a game for the weekend. And I remember going to the Blockbuster and looking at the cover of Resident Evil 1 when I first got my PlayStation. And I'm like, what is this? Oh, man. If you know the cover, like Google the cover art for Resident Evil 1 and it's this freaky looking dude with a freaky looking face. Or like kind of a normal looking dude making a freaky face, I guess. Anyway, it was weird for my 14-year-old self. And I was like, well, what is this? And I looked at the back of it and like, oh, this looks pretty cool. And rented it, and the rest was history. But yeah, that's kind of the way I came up. Arcades, of course, NES, Sega Genesis, and then kind of PlayStation stuff after that. But yeah.
That's wild, man. That's wild. I can't remember who it was recently was talking about. It might have been Richard Marroquin on Twitter. He was talking about Resident Evil having the box art and stuff, and I was like, I think I got it confused with Resident Evil 2. But I told him, like, yeah, anytime I saw it in the video store and I saw that cover, I would run past it because it would scare me. So
yeah. 2 had the zombie with the hand kind of reaching
the
around
hand
the
reaching around.
wall.
That's the one I was thinking of. That was 2. I don't know what I was thinking with 1, but no, maybe I was thinking, doesn't matter. But I will say this, similar to Porcho, who wrote in and said that his parents are the reason he got into gaming. Me too. My parents are the reason that I got into gaming, and they would later regret that because I never grew out of gaming. But they, we had, we would always go to one of my relatives' house, typically around the summer, and for some reason they had a Sega Genesis, and they had Sonic the Hedgehog on there. They had a Power Rangers game, and I remember going over there and just playing it like crazy. And they had picked up an NES as well. And so they had some of those games there. But man, I remember going there and just playing it like, I don't know what these are, but this is so cool. It's like the cartoons I'm watching, but I get to like interact with it and play it. And the Sonic character is so cool. Look at how edgy he looks. Oh man, it's so cool. And I would just always play these games, and it would drive my parents nuts because they would have a hard time getting me to leave when it was time to leave. And I'm like, no, I need one more level. Come on. Being a little baby 5-year-old Logan that I was and throwing a fit. And so I distinctly remember one Christmas I was opening up gifts, and I opened up one, and it was Batman Returns on Sega Genesis. And I'm like, I don't have a Sega. What is this? And they're like, oh, well, we got you these so you could take it with us when we go visit so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense, I guess. Well, I got to wait to play this? That's kind of dumb. Why would y'all do that to me? I opened up another one, and it was Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Guys, why are you buying me Genesis games? This is just really mean. And, I'd get through all the games and stuff, and then get through all the gifts, and I remember sitting there just kind of looking at the box art, just marveling over it, like, oh, Sonic's so cool. Oh, this is Tails. Oh, I didn't even know who this was. Oh, this is so cool. Just being giddy over the box art like I was. Hence the reason why I made a video all about box art on the YouTube channel. And then my parents were like, oh, wait, there's one more gift that we forgot to give you. I was like, okay, cool, whatever. And I opened it, and it was a pretty decent sized box, and I opened it up, and it was a Sega Genesis, and I just lost my ever-loving mind. If any of you have seen that video of that kid unwrapping a Nintendo 64 on Christmas Day and he just loses it, that was me with the Sega Genesis. And so, man, ever since then, I've been gaming. Yeah, it might surprise some people. I started off with Sonic the Hedgehog before I did Mario. We would later get an NES to make up for that. But man, I gamed like crazy ever since then. Played Comic Zone. Shout out to the OGs who remember that.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a good game. So hard, but super good. And I was really into comic books at the time, so it just fit really right in the alley. Played X-Men. There's a Spider-Man game. And that was when we would go to the video store, and I would just run through the section of video games and just look at all the different Sega Genesis games. And I would typically gravitate more towards the Spider-Man games like Separation Anxiety, Maximum Carnage, those sorts of games, even though I think those two are pretty much the same game. I would just always do that, man. And I've just been gaming ever since. After that, I was a Nintendo fan, got the Super Nintendo when everybody was getting a PlayStation or an N64, because I felt weird going just from the Genesis to a PlayStation or an N64. I'm like, I missed out on the Super Nintendo. Let me play this first. And so played a lot of those games, went to N64, so on and so forth. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, man, I've been gaming ever since then, and it's been awesome. My parents hated it for a while. They're like, okay, why don't you grow out of these? I'm like, no, these are awesome. Like, come on.
And that's exactly how my mom was, or my mom in particular. I remember when we got married, or when I got married to my wife, not you and I.
No, that would be weird.
I remember, like, after a couple of years, my mom would say things to Emily like, is Micah still playing those games? And she'd be like, yeah.
Yep.
I'm like, Mom, I'm never going to stop playing these unless my hands like get decrepit and just, arthritic and can't play. So,
yeah. But even then, you're just going to beam it straight into your brain, and it'll be like that thing from Ready Player One. You'll play it that way. Yeah,
100%.
But like I mentioned earlier, we did have some folks writing in, and I did mention Porcho, so I'll finish his write in here where he mentions his parents were the reason that he got into gaming. And it was Christmas 1998. He got a Nintendo 64 with 4 controllers and Mario Kart 64 to play with his 3 sisters. It's always a good time. It's a way to wreck your relationships is through Mario Kart 64. Life became very fun, and I didn't care as much for watching cartoons. I love how gaming has developed and become such a great form of storytelling. This would be the reason I'm still into games, for its ability to deliver a story and to be able to immerse you in it. And I tied in Kokoro Daki's right in with this too, just because it kind of branching off this immersion front here. He says games like Final Fantasy X and 15 told amazing stories while also offering fun combat with the potential to play mostly however you like, along with fun challenges like fighting Seymour yet again in Final Fantasy X. Whoa, Horodaki. Spoilers, man. I'm just kidding. This game's super old. Games like Minecraft offer fun survival challenges like gathering resources and then encourage the player to do big and creative things with those resources, like building a nice house, a town, a castle, etc. I've never seen any other medium that can do these things as well in a way that feels both fun and interactive. And if I remember correctly, Kokoro Daki has been putting in some work on Minecraft and has been posting screenshots in the Discord server. Y'all got to check those out in the What You've Been Playing channel. But Mike, I want to kick things off with this because I know some people probably look at us, look at the podcast, or just look at gaming in general. Like, how can people past the age of 15 keep playing these games? Like, we get Call of Duty, we get Roblox. I don't get Roblox. Other people get it, I guess. But people look at Minecraft and like, why do people play these games? And I think part of it is that immersion factor that Porcho and Kokoro Daki are mentioning here. Let's kick it off, man. What is it about games that keep you coming back? And if you can touch on immersion, let's wrestle with that a little bit.
Yeah, the thing that I've mentioned a lot in the past that I love about games is, I love story-driven games and the mixture of the two, the way that a good story and good dialogue and everything come into the whole medium. And so like a Plague Tale Innocence or a Plague Tale Requiem, for example, it was a beautiful blending of a great story mixed with gameplay mechanics with this, like you felt like you were Amicia holding Hugo's hand, going through all these trials and all these, crazy situations that they get placed in. Mm-hmm. And, when you have that agency there, you're walking through, you're doing the things, you're failing, you're trying again, and you have that agency there. There's more to it, consuming that story than just maybe reading a book or watching a movie. Now, of course, everyone has their tastes and flavors of the way they like to consume things, but I saw immersion listed a bunch on the patron write-ins. Just that fusion of being able to get into it yourself, have that agency, and feel like you've sort of had something to do with the story unfolding in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. Sometimes you actually do with the gameplay choices or the way that the game is set up. Sometimes you actually don't have any agency. It just feels like you have agency. Yeah. But even that sort of that veneer, that fake agency, if portrayed, in a well-designed way, can be really immersing. And so, when I kept going through, like I said, I just kept seeing sort of similar beats being hit. And I'm like, all the patrons are dead on. So, that's, I think it's the same thing for me. That's what keeps me coming back. If I've got an hour and a half to kill on a Thursday night, I was like, okay, well, I can watch a movie, and sometimes I'll do that. I could read a book. I seldom do that personally for me, or I say, I could watch, or I could play a game, and that's just more alluring to me. It's like, okay, well, I could watch, The Witcher on Netflix, or I could play The Witcher. Yeah, that the latter is way more enticing to me. Even for someone like me who likes linear narrative games, like, well, why would you just go watch a movie, Micah? It's because it means something more. When these impactful story beats happen and you've been playing as that character the whole time. Yeah. So that's kind of it in a nutshell for me, for kind of kicking off what the patrons were saying here. Yeah.
I think for me, like you look at video games and sure, you talk about people who read books or watch movies and they talk about being immersed in those stories, and you definitely do get immersed to a degree, but there's something different about gaming that really it really sucks you in a little bit deeper than what a movie or a book could do. And this might be different for other people, but I specifically remember you know, as I was playing through Genesis games and Super Nintendo games, you know, I would always like play them and kind of experience the fun factor and enjoy it and all that stuff. But there was never a game that really showed me what gaming could be until I played A Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time on the N64. And that game blew my little baby brain out of my head. Like, just the way that game opens in the what is it? Is it the Kokiri Forest or something like that? Just the way it opens up there, and you go to the tree, and you go inside the tree, and you're like doing all these things, and how the game just unfolds after that. I'm like, dude, this game is telling me a story right now, and I'm the main character, and I control how it plays out. I can go explore. I can go to was it Lon Ranch or something like that? I might be getting the names wrong, but I can go there and hang out, compete in some challenges a little bit later in the game. I can go to the town and talk to people. I can go buy things. I can get new gear, new items. Like, I was like, this is way different than anything I'd ever played up to that point. It really blew my mind. And when the credits rolled, I was like, you know, I kind of had that moment where like I felt like I just went on an adventure, so I was kind of exhausted. But I was like, that was such a cool game. I didn't know games could be like this. What are some other ones that are out there that are like this? And then I went on to find Buck Bumble, you know, good old Buck Bumble. I don't know. I don't know if that game was really, it's just a joke, but I don't know if that game was really telling a story or not. I don't remember much about it except for that dope intro song that it had. But no, man, immersion, man, there's something different about how games do it. You think about some of the great games. We just did a 3 episodes on the Metal Gear Solid series. You have those. You have BioShock. You have Silent Hill 2, which is a game I just finished recently that it really immerses you in there. And man, you have all these games. Metroid Prime is another great example. You have all these games that just, yes, they're fun. Yes, they're video games, but at the same time, they're telling you a story in a unique way that gets you sucked in. And it just gets you to play around in a whole other world that has different physics, different rules, and you just get to play around with it. That's kind of what I liked about Jonathan Harrison's write-in, where he mentions at the end, well, I'll read his a little bit just because I think it's funny how he got into gaming. He says, the year was 1984. The place was a Toyota dealership in South Florida. The game was a Miss Pac-Man cocktail machine. I'm not super familiar with what a cocktail machine is, but that just sounds pretty funny. He says, I've owned a new console from every generation, Atari 2600 going forward, mostly Nintendo and Sony. Why do I still play? Probably for the same reason that I would rather play sports than watch them. I like the immersion depths and the ability to ask what if, then try out an idea and see the results. That's what I love about Legend of Zelda. If you're like, okay, I wonder what happens if I take this bomb and put it in front of this wall. Oh, it blew a hole in the wall. I didn't know this. I go in, there's a whole cave I can explore. That's super cool. I wonder if I shoot this arrow through this fire, will it catch that other thing on the other, that net on the other side on fire? And lo and behold, it does. Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time was the first game that got me to experiment with different ideas and think, if I do this, will it do this? And 9 times out of 10, it would do it. And it's super cool. I think just for even as the kid that I was growing up, like that did so much for me, just thinking like mechanically and just problem solving and doing all that. There's nothing quite like it. You can do that with movies to a degree. You can do that with books to a degree, but nothing to the degree that you can do it in video games at all.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Real quick, a cocktail machine, Logan, is not like the full-sized arcade machine, but kind of just that table that you kind of sit 2 people on either side, and you can. It's like a flat thing that you just sit at.
That's what that's called.
That's what a cocktail machine is when you're talking about the Miss Pac-Man. But
I'm going to look this up now.
But yeah, going back to, you know, when I was saying earlier about I went to NES, Sega Genesis, and when the PlayStation came out and I got into all that, that's when it sort of clicked in me. It goes along with what you're saying here. I think part of the reason why is because those heavy narrative-driven games I started experiencing those for the first time. And going back to Blockbuster and Resident Evil 1, I remember that was probably the first like narrative-driven PlayStation 1 game I played on the PlayStation 1. Like I'd played like Tekken 2 and like Twisted Metal up to that point, but nothing like this. And I remember I brought it home, and like my dad, who was not into video games at all, he was like watching me, and I was like, look at this. I was like, look at what this game's doing here. And you know, it was campy as all get out. It was Resident Evil 1. Yeah. You know, but like when those Doberman Pinscher dogs bust through the window, and you know, you get a jump scare like in many classic horror movies, but now it's like, oh, I've got to run. I got to run.
Yeah, you're the one that has to run.
That was like, and I think maybe that's why I love the horror genre so much, because that was kind of my first, for all intents and purposes, like first really narrative driven game that I experienced was Resident Evil, I guess. Now that I think about it, I guess I would never really thought about that. But yeah, so like that sort of agency, like we talk about, this just was fantastic, and 3D era games, like when we started getting Doom and Ocarina of Time and Resident Evil 1, it's like, man, it really started kind of it started blossoming and opening up, I think.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And it's just it's cool to see, because as games kind of evolved, they introduced new concepts and new things to really kind of challenge us as the players. I'm going to get into Alex Castellanos' write-in here, who, I got to be honest, the way he starts this write-in off is super awesome. He says, "My grandma got me into gaming." Shout out to the grandmas who introduced gaming to their grandkids.
Yes. Dude, Alex is a grown man. Like, he's a grown man right now, and so his grandma got him into game. I love that.
It's so, dude, you don't hear about that. That's super rad, But he continues on here and says that she had an NES in her home, and when she was babysitting, it meant Super Mario 1 and 2, and eventually 3, Excite Bike. Oh, dude, I put some time into Excite Bike. Oh my gosh, I love that game. Zelda and more. That led me to getting my own Game Boy for Christmas, and the rest is history. Keep coming back to games today because I love the comfort and coziness of playing through games and trying to overcome small or not so small challenges to get the next story beat or next zone. That cycle never gets old. And I've heard a comedian say this. I can't remember which comedian say this, but he was talking about how video games are kind of like the only medium that will stop you from progressing the story. It's like if you were reading a book and then it's like, define what this word is, and you can't do it, and the book's like, never mind, you're not finishing it, screw you, go away. That's how games are. You kind of have to really overcome certain trials to see the story through to the end, whereas a movie or a book, you just kind of have to sit there, take it in, and absorb it. But gaming is like, no, if you can't beat this challenge, you don't get the rest of the story, so you better get good, right? And so, man, I gotta know, how do you feel about difficulty in games? Has your taste with that changed over the years, or what does that look like? Because games can be pretty difficult.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely changed over the years. I think if we went back and tried to, play the style of games that were on the NES and SNES now as a norm, we might be, bashing our head against the wall. A lot of really kind of just, not great design, really hard puzzles, kind of, hard to figure out. Of course, we have the internet now, so things are completely different as far as like guides and tips and just figuring stuff out. No one's spending 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour anymore bashing their head against the wall on puzzle. They're just looking it up. If they, so it's a completely different era. I think we are kind of it's which is I was about to say we are kind of conditioned to play easier games, which is why the Souls genre and games of that ilk have sort of taken off in popularity, or one reason why, I should say, not completely due to the difficulty, but that is an attractive aspect of those types of games. Games like Hollow Knight, games that test your mettle. They're partially popular for that reason. I am not as good at video games as I used to be, probably. I remember I beat that original NES Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, the one with like the overhead map. You go down to the sewers and it's a 2D side scroller. Like, I beat that game. That game is hard as crap, man. I don't know how I did that. I beat it exactly one time as a kid, I remember. And the last level is cheap as all get out, let me tell you. But anyway, I don't know how I did it, but like I wouldn't be able to do that now. I don't have the time to bash my head against the wall like I did when I was 10 or whatever. So that just wouldn't happen. Difficulty has totally changed. But yeah, going back to what Alex has said, that cycle of getting through the next zone, watching the next cutscene or CG scene or whatever it is, back on the PlayStation days and stuff, or PS1 days, I should say. That was a definite hook, a big motivating factor to get through those RPGs, Xenogears, whatever the case. What's coming up in the story,
Yeah, and that's really rewarding. I remember, when I play the games, specifically like the Halo games, I would really love it if like I played through it and got through a really hard part and then I got a cutscene. I was like, oh, cool! I get a cutscene. I get to watch Master Chief do his thing and talk and stuff like that. Oh, this is so cool. And this really took off in Halo Reach because you could customize your Spartan, and so I was always like, oh man, how's my Spartan look in this cutscene?
Yeah.
And I was kind of one of those guys that would like change one little piece of armor on my Spartan and then go play through the entire game again just to see how it looked in the cutscenes. I also didn't have any other games at the time, so that's just what I did. but I just love doing that. And man, I will say, I used to hate difficult games. Like if it was too hard, I wouldn't mess with it. The only reason me and my brother played the NES Ninja Turtles game as long as we did was just because we were there kind of rooting each other on. But man, we got past that water level maybe once. I think maybe just once. But it was so hard. But we spent so many hours trying to get past it because we were wanting to get good. We wanted to prove that we could do it. We never proved we could do it. But I never really liked difficult games. And I was like, if a game's too hard, I'm like, I'm going to quit. But now it's like, if the game is too hard, it's like, no, I'm gonna beat this game. And I've done this multiple times with games like Final Fantasy VIII, and like with Final Fantasy VIII, I don't know if anybody remembers this. A long time to your listeners, I got all the way to the end of the game, and because of how the leveling works in that game, the final dungeon was just impossible for me. And so I was like, fine, I'm going to replay the whole game. And I replayed the whole game, but I did it to where you could kind of cheese it a little bit. And so I did that, beat all the side bosses, finished the game. I was like, yeah, I've got it. And then Bloodborne came out, and I was like, this game is hard, but I am determined to beat this game. And my history with From Software games is history ever since then. I've been playing all of them and really enjoy them. There's some I like a little bit more than others. I think Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring are kind of the top tier of FromSoft games. And it's just, I love doing it. I love being able to figure out how an enemy moves and exploiting that, finding their weakness and then taking them down, because it's just, there's nothing quite like it. But it's definitely one of those games where I kind of have to be in a certain mindset to play. There's sometimes, like right now, if I tried to play it, I could tell you right now I wouldn't be able to get into it, because it's like, that's just not where my headspace is at. But I really have to be in the right headspace to play certain games that are known to be difficult. Like Mega Man is another one. I love the Mega Man X games, but I have to be in a certain mindset to play those. But yeah, man, I love the challenges that they give, but I also kind of like how some of the challenges have even gotten a little meta now. And we've talked about, trophies and achievements. You look through the trophy list and you're like, okay, I think I can do that. And you try to do it and you spend like 2 hours doing it. But then you finally get it and you have a little badge of honor that shows you did it now. So I think that's one thing that's kind of cool about games, is how they've given you those challenges within the game that you can then have something that says, hey, I did this, So it's super cool how that works out in games. But something I noticed as I was reading through our patron write-ins is that there's a lot of you, and I'm not saying this to shame any of you or to make you feel old, but there's a lot of y'all that started off with the Atari 2600, man. I was like, wow. I was no disrespect. If anything, I'm a little jealous. I would have loved to have grown up around the time when the Atari 2600 came out, because I would have loved to have been there when that was introduced. Can you imagine, you're used to watching TVs or watching TV or reading comic books, and all of a sudden you have this joystick that you plug into the TV and you are engaging with your TV in a whole way. That had to have been mind blowing. It makes me jealous. But Samuel, if I butcher your last name, I'm sorry, but I'm assuming it's Samuel Alicio.
Yeah, I think that's
it's got to be Alicia, right? Write in and let us know.
I think so.
He says, when I was very young, I went to a birthday party and noticed a bunch of bigger kids huddled around a small TV. They were playing a racing game on the Atari 2600. I just watched and was in complete awe. I didn't get to play a game until around 86, when my family and I would go to my bachelor uncle's house, and I would spend the whole time playing his Atari. It's been a love affair ever since. The main draw was the interactiveness of it all. And I think that's one of the cool things about gaming, too, that plays into it, is the whole community aspect. Man, me and my friends would always play like Sonic the Hedgehog or Mortal Kombat. Don't tell my parents. We would play Mortal Kombat, and we would hook up both controls and we would play. We would go toe to toe, and there's just that community aspect of it, man. It was just it's something that I kind of miss nowadays, since a lot of the multiplayer's online. You don't really have that same experience of sitting in the same room with your friends and just talking trash and kind of shoving each other and playing around a little bit, as what we did back in the early days of gaming. You still have that with some games now, but nothing quite to the prevalence that you had here. But Micah, man, do you have any like memories of playing games like with friends or just in a community type aspect?
Oh yeah, 100%. The main thing I'll go to, you brought up Halo earlier.
Yeah,
this is not like early on in games, but that's like when I think of playing with people, it's Halo 1 Combat Evolved. I was in college. I was a freshman in college. My first semester in college was that September or October, or whatever, was when the Xbox came out with Halo. I remember my roommate came back one weekend from being home and brought an Xbox with Halo back with him. And we were one of the first ones in my dorm to have an Xbox, period, because they were pretty brand new and everyone was suspect of them. And we started playing. We're like, wow, this is incredible. And then we quickly realized you could plug it, like if you just, plug it into the dorm LAN, like your dorm wall, you're immediately plugged into everyone in the dorm because it's one big LAN. And so we're like, oh, we can play with Josh and Kevin across the hall. Okay. And so Josh and Kevin got an Xbox, just some fake people I just made up. But, we had like easily 4v4, no problem, anytime we wanted to, like easy. So, playing Blood Gulch 4v4 just at the drop of a hat on like that. Like I basically flunked out of college, out of the first school I was at, because of Halo 1, essentially. Nothing I'm proud of, and I'm not endorsing doing such a thing. Youngsters that are just starting off in undergrad school or any school. But yeah, that, and just going back even further to like older days is like playing games like NFL Game Day, like a Madden kind of counterpart back in the PlayStation days, with my older brother, and like I would get a touchdown, he would come over and like pound me and stuff, and and things like that, and just fun things like that. Of course, we all had those. Well, I hope we all had those sort of memories, of your brother just beating the stew out of you after you got intercepted his pass. But yeah, lots of good camaraderie and just fun multiplayer days. But yeah, I can't think of video game multiplayer in my history without thinking about Halo. That is the game for me.
I think one of my big ones growing up was the fighting genre. That was the one that me and my friends always played. I mentioned not Metal Gear, but Mortal Kombat. And Street Fighter was a huge one that when I got my was Street Fighter 2 on Sega Genesis?
Yeah, I think so.
If not, it was the first one. I'll have to double check it, but it might have been when I got my Super Nintendo. Regardless, I remember playing Street Fighter 2 a ton with my cousins. And of course, because I owned the game, I played it a lot and put more experience in with Blanca and Dhalsim, and kind of cheated with Dhalsim. He has that really stupid long reach with his arms and legs. It's kind of unfair. But and then you have that flame attack when you get too close. Yeah, it was cheap. But, it was just something that we always played. And, like, the fighting genre holds a really close place to just, I guess, my nostalgia when it comes to gaming. That's why I still will pick up fighting games every now and then. I'm not good at them anymore by any stretch of the imagination, with the exception of Injustice. That's a game that me and my wife played together, and I would put some serious time into. Playing as Green Lantern and Batman. And you can ask Elliot Hillis, who's been part of the community for a while now. I gave him a good whooping in Injustice. He was talking a lot of trash. I was like, okay, let's settle this. And he was surprised when I pulled up my 14-15 string combo as Green Lantern. He's like, oh crap, you've really been practicing. I was like, yeah.
Super good.
But I love fighting games. There's something about it where, like, I guess it's kind of like Dragon Ball Z. Like, you have these two fighters coming in that are going to just, like, do their best and just beat each other up. But at the end of the day, they're like, oh, that was a good fight, bro. And you're going to be friends at the end of the day. You're going to go drink a Dr. Pepper together or whatever, go out for pizza, whatever. there's something about fighting games that just really brings people together in such a really cool way. And you talk about how you were playing football and your brother would score and he'd go pound on you, whatever. That was me and my brother with Tekken. We would play Tekken and I would like beat him around and he would just be like just punch me in the arm. And I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I can still beat you in real life." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Pick the sticks up. It's round 2. Let's go." I love fighting games, man. I wish I could play more of them because I know there's some out there now that are like, what is it? I think Grand Blue is another one that's real popular now. There's King of Fighters is another one. Like, there's some really good ones out that I haven't been able to play yet. I'll still pick up Mortal Kombat from time to time, and then as soon as I see one of the new fatalities, I'm like, okay, cool, I'm out. This is okay. You guys got way worse. But like Street Fighter V, like that got announced. I'm like, oh, dude, yeah. I'm tempted to pick that up, even though I know I'll probably play it like maybe twice. But I'm tempted to pick it up just because I have such a long history with Street Fighter and with so many good memories of it that I'm probably going to keep doing it. That's one of the things I love about gaming is just the community aspect of it now. It's so good. And I see it all the time with my students now because they're always just like, we'll have 10 minutes left in class and like, oh, can we play Clash Royale? And I'm like, okay, but let me watch y'all play this real quick. Let me see how y'all are doing this. And they do this all the time. And they talk about strategies and like they bond together through that. And it's just gaming is cool in that regard. Again, there's a lot of different hobbies you could do this with, but gaming is a little different in that regard. But kind of speaking of gaming and how it's different, Chris Freeman wrote in and said, kind of noting about how other hobbies and time comparisons and stuff. Other hobbies take up so much time in comparison. Certainly video games can claim lots of times, especially those open worlders or those live service games like Destiny 2. But comparing video games to hunting or sports or woodworking, there's an immediacy to gaming that you can't really get with any of these. If you have to go, you can just save and turn it off, and there's more to it. But again, I'm trying to get all these write-ins with the time constraints that we have. And that was something I was thinking about with gaming is that, like, yeah, depending on the games you play, they can take up a lot of time. But there is that sense of, like, immediacy, or like there's a bit of a different feel to it, right? Like, you can put some work into a game and feel like you've leveled up or progressed or something, whereas, if you do woodworking or like with my Gundams, I'm building model Gundams, you're not really done until that model robot's finished and it's there. But with gaming, it's like, you can just pause it.
It's a bunch of micro accomplishments.
Exactly.
Is what you're doing. You're figuring out one puzzle here, or you're like, okay, I just figured out the whole ice dungeon or whatever. These types of things. Even if it's just, not all games are, like that, but you get through one level on like a Doom game or whatever the case, they're very digestible. You can take off chunks, you could chop up lots of things like that and say, well, Micah, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, and just the variety of types of games that you can engage with now is just, the gaming is the biggest, entertainment medium in existence today for a reason. There's so many ways that, whether you want to play Candy Crush or a Plague Tale or Microsoft Flight Simulator or Age of Empires or Halo or Celeste, you have it. It's all here. I say it so often on the show. We are eating so good. No one should be complaining about Gotham Knights or a Plague Tale of 30 frames. Go play the other thousands of games that literally exist and stop your complaining. Stop your belly aching. Go play Gotham Knight, which apparently looks way better than go play Arkham Knight, which apparently looks way better than Gotham Knight. Stop fussing. We're eating good.
Micah's coming in hot on this one.
There's stuff everywhere that you can enjoy. So yeah, that's there's just so many ways. So yeah, sorry.
I agree, man. It's funny. I will rag on mobile games, right? I'll come on the show and rag on mobile games, but I'll get super hyped when Mini Motorways announces an endless mode. I'm like, oh yes, this is great. But even here lately, I've been seeing so many stinking ads for this Marvel Snap game. And an hour before we started recording this podcast, I was like, you know what? Fine. I'll download the stupid game and see what it's all about. And then like 40 minutes later, I'm like, oh crap, I need to go record the podcast. I'm running late here. Mike, I don't know if you noticed that I was running a little late. It's because I was playing Marvel Snap. It's this stupid card game with Marvel characters, but I'm like, this is surprisingly good, right? And earlier today, my students convinced me to download Clash Royale and give it a try. I was like, oh, there's some strategy here. Like, you really gotta time when you're placing your units down right and decide like if you're gonna flank one side of the map or if you're gonna like kind of just bum rush one side and keep it going. And I was like, man, there's a surprising amount of strategy here that it's kind of it's scratching all the right itches for me, and I'm liking it, man. But it's one of those games where both of those, you can finish a match in probably a minute or two. So if you're like waiting at the doctor's office or, you're on break or something at work, you can pull those up and play it for just a little bit. And this is all on your phone. Back in my day, we had to bring a Game Boy with us, and it was battery operated. We had to have one cartridge with us. I sound like an old man, but you get the idea. Here, you can download. I think that's the other crazy thing is the wide range of access that there is to games now. That if you would have shown this to me at the age of 5, my mind would have been blown. I would have lost it. There's no way, especially since some of them are free, and of course you can put money into them if you want, but you don't have to. But like, it's crazy, man. It's crazy how games can they can claim a lot of time for sure, and that's why we kind of tend to warn people, hey, be careful about that, be cognizant of that, set a timer if you need to. That's what I love about my Xbox. I can set a timer on it and it'll pop up and say, hey, you've been playing for 2 hours, you should probably take a break. It's like, thank you for that. I probably should go take a break, and I'll pull up my phone and play a game on it. No, I'm kidding. But I'll go take a break or something. And but it's crazy, man. There's so many games now that appeal to so many different people. And I would even argue that now, because of that, those of you listening that probably don't really consider yourself a gamer, you probably play a game every now and then. Do you play Wordle every morning? That's a game. Do you play Framed every morning where you guess the movie in 6 frames? That's a game. Do you play Hurdle where you have to guess the song in like certain second increments and you only get 30 seconds to listen to it? All of these are games, and there's so many different things that we can just do now that it's just cool. We can play it in 2-minute bursts whenever we got time. And or you can play it in 2-hour bursts. I don't want to hear anybody complaining about gamers playing games for 2+ hours when your football games last 5 to 6 hours. I sat through a Texas Longhorns game the other day, and I'm like, God, how long is this game? 6 hours? Good grief! It's like, how many things I could have got done in Destiny 2 in that amount of time. But it's just nuts. I'm kind of rambling at this point, but like it is different than some of those other hobbies. When you go out hunting, you're going to be out there for several hours. You can't just. I guess you could just pick up and leave, but you're not going to do that 2 minutes in. You're going to do it 10 minutes in. You're probably going to do it an hour in, right? You're going to stay there until you get something. And so, it kind of. Chris Freeman even mentioned this about sports. You can't just leave in the middle of the game. You could, but you're probably going to be playing again. And if you play Madden on Xbox, you can pause it and put it on quick resume and go carry on about your day. It's gaming has that thing where it's kind of there whenever you're ready, and it's just cool. It's just kind of cool to see. Micah, I don't know if you have anything else to add before I get to Richard Marroquin's write-in. I kind of wanted to end on that because that's a funny story. Richard, man, your story gave me a good laugh, dude, and I hope it gives some of the listeners a good laugh too, specifically at the end. But he goes, the year was 1979, and I was 4 years at the time. I love how some of y'all started your write-ins as like, the year was 1979. I was... Yes. It's very dramatic. I love it. Not dramatic in a bad sense, but like it's good storytelling. Anyway, the year was 1979, and I was 4 years at the time. My family was at a party at one of my dad's fellow squadron buddies' house. A group was playing Combat on the 2600, and one of them asked me if I wanted to play. Once I had the Atari joystick in my hand, I was hooked. I did not get to own my own Atari until 3 years later. We were at my grandparents' house for Christmas and opened up a present with Pac-Man and Donkey Kong. Oh man, two classic games. I put some time into Pac-Man. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. But he goes on and says, I was so excited until I realized my Atari was at the house 8 hours away. Ever since then, whatever spare free time I have, I spend it on gaming. And man, Sorry, it was just a funny story. Like, can you imagine the excitement of getting in those games? You're like, I can't play this until 8 hours away.
Yeah, that's savage for like a Christmas morning. You got to wait to play your games like that? No way.
I was going to try and relate it to when my parents got me my Genesis, but I was like, no, I had to wait like maybe 8 minutes, if that, you know?
Yeah, no, not comparable.
Richard's over here having to wait 8 hours to play his games. That's probably brutal. At least you get to look at the box art. That was back when box art was either really cool or...
And read the manual back when that was a thing.
Oh, my gosh. Dude, I miss instruction manuals in games so stinking much. Oh,
dude, people that are our age, you know, in your 30s and 40s and stuff, you're riding home from your KB Toys, you cracked open the game, and you're reading that manual, man. It's sitting in the back seat of mom's station wagon or minivan. You know you're reading that manual all the way to home.
Dude, friend of the show and also patron over here, Jonathan Harrison. He's been selling some of his old classic games, and he was selling his old Metal Gear Solid 1 physical copy. And I was like, dude, I've always wanted to own this. I'm gonna buy it off you. And when I opened it, there was a manual in there. I was like, oh my gosh, there's a manual in it. And I was flipping through it, reading the story and some of the things. I saw the codec thing in there that you were supposed to use, and I'm just like,
yeah.
Oh, dude, this is so cool. I miss this so much about physical games, man. That's like when The Witcher 3 first came out and you open it up and it came in with like all this stuff, like a map of the game and the instruction manual and all this stuff. I was like, dude, I've missed this. I have missed this.
It can't be understated how valuable the original Legend of Zelda having that physical map with the game was. That was so cool.
Yes.
Like just the absolute coolest. That helped make the game in a lot of ways for a lot of kids, I think.
Yep. Oh man. Such good memories, man. So why do we keep playing games? All these reasons we listed here. There's a lot of nostalgia tied to it for sure. But I know for me, I love a good story. Like what it boils down to it, I love a good story. I love some good addictive gameplay. Especially if you can play with friends. And man, I think probably the story is the biggest thing for me. I love good stories. That's why I'm reading the Stormlight Archive books now, very slowly reading the Stormlight Archive books. I just love a good story. I love something that'll make me think. That's why I love Silent Hill 2 so much. Like the more I sit and think about that game and kind of what it was doing and how it was presenting themes of suffering and dealing with that and overcoming that and kind of owning up to your own mistakes in different ways, I was like, golly, this game is so smart. Like, it's definitely grotesque. It's not for everybody, but man, it's really good. The story's so good.
And you know, video games aren't necessarily telling the best stories. I mean, there's obviously way better literature out there and all sorts of things, but it's that blending of the interactivity with the storytelling. It's overcoming a challenge and beating that Elden Ring boss. Like, yes, like stay down, you know, like overcoming those challenges mixed with the interactivity, the story, all that kind of stuff. Of course, you know, we keep bringing up storytelling a lot. That's not even in so many games, you know, but for us here at TRG, that's a big aspect of the kind of games we like to play. And the question is, why do we keep coming back? I mean, here we are. Is that we love good interactive stories with good challenges, and go back to Alex's sort of point, that loop and just that sort of that dopamine rush loop that you get from getting those challenges and stuff done. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's a good place to end it, man. You know, TRG, that's what we're all about. We do love games, but we like to do it to the glory of God, and that's kind of what we do here on the show. I think that's a big reason why we really like story things, too, is because it gives us a content for the show. But yeah, that being said, dear listeners, those of you listening in, what do you think about games? Do you still play games? I mean, I would hope you would. Otherwise, you're like, over an hour into this episode, and I mean, we convinced you to play some games. But either way, share some of those memories with us. Discord, all the different places you can connect with us. But before we let you go, some recos, some things you gotta go check out at the end of this episode as we head out. Micah, what should our dear listeners check out?
Yeah, man. This is this brand of snack that I'm about to mention. You probably know about it. I feel like it's been around and I've not really paid attention, but it's been more readily available. As in, I can walk into a Walmart and walk out with a bag. And viewers on YouTube are about to see these these Albanese gummy bears or gummy worms or whatever. I don't know if you've had these, Logan. These are the best gummy bears in the world.
Okay.
It even says World's best right there.
It says it right on the label.
It says it on the label. And I put these gummy bears into my mouth and I said, yes, world's best gummy bears. I agree. No, Albanese, Albanese, whatever. Fantastic gummy bears, gummy worms. Treat your mouth with some of these bad boys.
I'm just thinking of that scene from Elf when he walks into the coffee shop and he's like, congratulations, you did it. World's best cup of coffee. Wow.
Yeah.
I guess it is November. We can watch Christmas movies now, so I think I might watch Elf tonight a little before I go to bed. I laughed a little bit. I walked out of my classroom a couple days ago and stood out in the halls. We monitored the halls, and the teacher across the hall from me, the Spanish teacher, had Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas Is You" just blaring, and I poked my head in, and I was like, "Are you rocking Mariah Carey right now?" She's like, "I didn't pick it. My students did." And there's this one kid in the corner dancing and singing to it. I'm like, "What a nerd!" But I can vibe with that. That's awesome. Oh man, that's not one of my recos though. It's just a fun little side story.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
My reco. Pick whichever one you want. And again, I hate mobile games, but Marvel Snap and Clash Royale are pretty decent. Not going to lie. It's a good bit of fun. You can finish your matches in 2 minutes or less. It's a good time, especially if you're in. There's a lot of our listeners who are into the Marvel stuff. Go check this out. It is free to play. There is some microtransactions and stuff like that. From my time playing it so far, which you can't really go off of much because it's only been like 45 minutes, doesn't really seem like it's pay to win or anything. It seems pretty good. I've had friends who've been playing it since it's released, and they say it's still pretty good. There's no, like, you don't have to pay to win, or there's no, like, seedy microtransactions. So check it out for yourself. Let me know how it is. If you want to fight me in Marvel Snap, just a Theo Logan. Hit me up.
And it's like a deck building game?
Yeah, it's like a deck building game. Kind of like it's not quite like Hearthstone or Eternal, but it's similar in that vein. But it's got like this weird 3-platform mix up. You'll see it when you play the game and you did the tutorial to walk you through it. But it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I like it. I like it quite a bit.
Download that to the old iPad. Okay.
There you go, man. There you go. Well, that being said, dear listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of The Reformed Gamers. Hey, maybe you were listening to this and you're like, I kind of like what these guys are doing here. Maybe I want to support them in there's a couple ways you can actually support us. You can go over to Patreon, as Micah mentioned earlier. Support as low as $1 a month helps us continue to do what we do here at the show. And it also allows you to get some extra perks like early uncut access to all of our episodes, behind the scenes content, and a few secret posts as well. I'm sure I'll be sharing a lot as I go through my adoption journey through this, so you guys can be like, okay, Logan's still alive. That's good. There's that there, but we totally understand. As we mentioned earlier at the top of the show, the PSVR too. Holy crap, that thing is expensive. Price is going up. Totally understand if you can't support us financially. I get it. There's other ways you can support us, and one of them is you already did it. Listening to this episode, thank you for doing that. Other things you can do is share the episode with your friends. If you're on YouTube, like it, subscribe to the channel, do all that stuff like that. Go to our website, The Reformed Gamers. You can connect with us, get some extra stuff there. You can also connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Discord. I think that's all of them. Links to everything will be in your show notes, so if I miss anything, it's all in there. So be sure to go and check that out. We'd love to connect with you. But with that being said, dear listeners, I will see you next year. And, you'll see Micah again in the next episode. With that being said, be a dear. Keep it locked here. We'll see you in the next episode.